let's talk about how to sell your oil and gas royalties or mineral rights, or both. There's really three ways that you can sell. You can sell to an individual buyer, which could be a person or a company. You can sell through a broker who will market your minerals to their pool of buyers, or you can sell it at auction. And that is probably the biggest pool of buyers, but it also is harder and more complex and maybe needs to be a higher value. So there are pros and cons to each of these. Let's go through them one by one. Some of the biggest benefits to selling to an individual are that we will buy smaller minerals. Like for example, we buy minerals that other buyers don't even buy. So we buy all different kinds of mineral rights, but for a lot of buyers, it just isn't worth all the time and effort to do all the research and prepare the closing documents, file the deed, transfer the ownership. It's not worth doing if they're not going to get a fairly substantial royalty revenue from it. So, but for us, yeah, we usually do it anyway, even if they're small. So it kind of depends how small. So the process in selling minerals to an individual buyer, whether that be a company or a person, is really simple. Basically, you submit your documents, we review them and give you an offer. You decide if you want to proceed with the offer, and if you do, then we give you a purchase and sale agreement so that we're all on the same page. And we do the title search and start creating the deeds. So for us, this process goes pretty fast. I know a lot of buyers that take, 60 to 90 or maybe 30 to 90 days to close on a mineral property. It usually doesn't take us more than a week. There are exceptions when we have to do a lot more title work, but for the most part, it doesn't really take that long. So the last step in the process is to sign the deed and receive the wire transfer. We have a way of doing this so that it's comfortable for both parties because there are no escrow companies who will go near mineral rights. Minerals are kind of the wild, wild west. So you have to be careful what buyer you pick and the closing process that you use. Okay, let's talk about brokers. When you sell your mineral rights through a broker, you have to have more substantial mineral rights. So selling through a broker probably makes more sense when you either own non-producing minerals or minerals that are producing but have a lot of upside potential. Like maybe you own 300 net mineral acres and you've got 4 wells, but there's room to drill 22 more wells. And you want to realize the potential of those undrilled wells. So selling through a broker might be the way to go in this situation. Because if you sell it at auction, that's going to be more focused on how much the minerals are making right now. And if you sell it to an individual buyer, that's usually the case as well. So if you've got minerals that are just a little bit developed and there's a lot of room for future development, a broker might be the way to go. So what a broker is going to do is request all the documents from you. They're going to create a data room and they will market it to their pool of buyers. They'll give them a certain amount of time, and it might be a situation in which it's just the offers come in as they come in, or it might be a sealed bid, such as everybody has until a certain date to submit their offer, and then you can review those offers and obviously probably go with the top one. So it's kind of a long process, but there's some hand-holding that goes with it, and there's some upside potential. You could potentially make more money by selling through a broker if you have the right kind of minerals to sell through a broker. They're not going to sell small minerals because they're putting a lot of time and effort into this. So they're really only going to focus on minerals that have a very, very high value so that whatever their commission is high enough that it's worth all of their time and effort. So if your minerals are small, go with an individual. If your minerals are big and undeveloped, potentially go with a broker. If they're big and developed, you have new wells, then we need to look at an auction. So let's do that now. So let's look at auctions. So mineral auctions are not generally available to the public. You have to be an accredited investor to bid on these auctions and buy minerals through an auction. There's like a little bit of exception to that, but the main mineral auction is called EnergyNet. To sell through an auction like EnergyNet, it can feel intimidating. I've talked with mineral owners who just burst into tears going through the process because it feels utterly overwhelming and there's so many options, because EnergyNet deals with working interest and leasehold interest and producing minerals and non-producing minerals and all kinds of different properties. I think they're getting into renewables now too. So it can feel really, really intimidating, and there's not as much hand-holding with that. So you may have to hire like a consultant. Like I have done this for people where I basically help them list their really, really high value minerals on EnergyNet. EnergyNet. There's another website called EnergyLink, and that is one where you get your royalty statements. And so in my mind, I always cross EnergyNet and EnergyLink. But what we're talking about is the auction, and that's EnergyNet. So with EnergyNet, there's also a lot of decisions to be made. Do you want to sell your minerals in one lot? Are they big enough to sell in multiple lots? Like you might want to, first of all, we're talking about like big minerals, like high value minerals. Maybe you're making $1,000 a month or $10,000 a month. This is more of the size range that does well on EnergyNet. So they do really, really well with minerals where there's a brand new well. So if you just had a well drilled and you're within the first few months of production, this is a great, great candidate for listing on an auction, because a lot of the buyers don't realize that that revenue is not going to be sustainable. They may not understand that it's going to drop at maybe 10% of what it is right now a year from now. You have choices. You can sell just the wellbore interest. You can sell your royalty interest. You can sell the mineral interest. You can sell part of your interest. You could divide it into lots. There's so many choices that it can feel overwhelming to mineral owners. But it's a really, really good option if you've got high value minerals with a new well. And high value minerals with a new well is also subjective, because if you're making $1,000 a month on a new well, that's really not that big of a deal, because maybe a year from now you might be making $200 on that same well, but it's a good enough size to list it with EnergyNet. So the process with putting minerals into an auction is you sign a contract with EnergyNet. You're going to be paying them a commission, and you submit all of your documents to them. They will go through, and they have a land department that will go through and organize it into a data room that is in their format that all of their buyers are expecting to see. Then there's going to be a due diligence period of a few weeks usually, where buyers can look and see the data room. They can do title searches. They can look at all the research around the minerals and decide if they want to bid on it when it comes to the auction day, how much they might want to bid. This is challenging for buyers because they may do all this research on a property and then quickly get outbid. But you have the potential to make some pretty good money off of listing your minerals in EnergyNet. In fact, there are some individual mineral buyers who will buy from mineral owners and then flip it on EnergyNet. So they might buy something that's not producing or that only has one well. As soon as there's another well drilled, assuming that's possible where the minerals are, then they will list that on EnergyNet so that they can take advantage of that really high revenue in the very beginning. I don't do this. I keep everything that I buy, but I see a lot of other buyers playing this game, and I don't like it. It's not for me. I keep everything that I buy, and I just use my royalties to buy more royalties, and I just grow slowly and organically, and it's a lot of fun, and I enjoy it. So there's other choices you can make in the auction as well. You can decide whether you want a reserve. Like you don't want to sell your minerals under, say, I don't know, $25,000 or whatever. They will advise you on what that reserve should be because they have data on selling minerals in your area. So they kind of know what it's going to sell for. So when it comes to the auction, there will be probably multiple bids. If you have put in a reserve and the reserve is not met, then EnergyNet will present you with the top bids. And you can choose whether you want to go ahead and sell or you want to decide not to sell. Or you could also relist your minerals and try to sell them again like the next week or in a month or something like that. So once the auction is finished and you've either selected a buyer from the top bids if they didn't meet your reserve, or your reserve was met, that will trigger an automatic purchase. The buyer will transfer funds, and there's kind of a whole closing process that goes on behind the scenes. You will have already submitted a deed. So that's the other downside about using EnergyNet is that you have to create your own deed. Now they provide you with kind of a blank one, but you could also have an attorney create a proper deed for you, which is always a good idea. They'll take their commission out and then you will get the rest of the funds. So selling at auction can be a really smart way to go if you've got minerals with new wells or you own a very high interest. That can also be a really good option. If you have non-producing minerals or producing minerals with a lot of upside potential and the revenue doesn't really reflect the value, then going with a broker might be a really good option. And for all your sort of run-in-the-mill minerals, you've got individual buyers. And the benefit of selling through an individual buyer is you've got the hand-holding. They will help you through the process. There's less for you to do. They do most of the work. It's free. They're not going to take a commission or anything. So there's 3 ways to sell your minerals. You can sell it to an individual, you can have a broker help you, or you can put it up for sale on an auction. And EnergyNet's not the only mineral auction, it's just the most popular one. I hope this has been helpful and that you're able to figure out which path you want to take when looking at selling your mineral rights.